Theresa May's charm offensive on Donald Trump, the children forced to care for their parents, and the amazing story of a baby's survival against the odds. You're watching 5 News Tonight. Theresa May's just landed in America, promising to renew the special relationship and saying sometimes opposites attract. But Donald Trump's got a new problem as a raft of key government officials refuse to serve under him. Also still at school but caring for their parents, the reality of daily life for thousands of children.
I mean, it's hard because I'm constantly always tired and I'm always feeling weak, but I just have to push through because, you know, life's not easy, really, is it?
Born 16 weeks early, weighing just 1 pound and 6 ounces, the little girl who's become an amazing story of survival. Also tonight, we're talking about Britain's last dam buster. It was one of the most daring missions of World War II. Now, there's pressure on Downing Street to honour the last surviving British airman who took part in it. And too old to keep fit, says who? Meet the 97-year-old who's showing us all up. Hello and welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Sian Williams. The Prime Minister has just arrived in America, where she's promising to renew the so-called special relationship between Britain and the United States. Asked if she really could do business with a man like Donald Trump, she said sometimes opposites attract. But Theresa May promised to take a tough line, saying Britain is and always has been against torture after the president suggested he would allow it. Julian Drucker reports.
Mrs May goes to Washington. Opposites attract, she's quipped to reporters tonight at the start of her charm offensive with Donald Trump. This morning, she started her transatlantic trip. Her mission, to embolden the so-called special relationship. Tonight in Philadelphia, she'll tell Republican leaders and Mr Trump that the UK must, quote, build relationships with old friends.
This is the Oval Office.
But new enemies were the focus in his first TV interview as president. His plan for dealing with the self-styled Islamic State is one of the most controversial things ever said by a commander-in-chief.
When they're chopping off the heads of our people and other people, when they're chopping off the heads of people because they happen to be a Christian in the Middle East, when ISIS is doing things that nobody has ever heard of since medieval times, would I feel strongly about waterboarding? As far as I'm concerned, we have to fight fire with fire.
In response to those comments, the Foreign Secretary stressed Washington hasn't as yet changed its policy on torture.
I think we have to be very careful with this. I don't think we've seen any policy changes, official policy changes or policy pronouncements.
If this row causes friction between Theresa May and Donald Trump, it won't be the first time. December 2015, and the then Home Secretary had this to say.
We all agree that the remarks that Donald Trump made in relation to Muslims were divisive, they were unhelpful, they were wrong.
The president has already hinted he wishes to emulate the special relationships of the past. But in a rapidly transforming world, who needs who the most?
The special relationship has always been something that Britain thinks about and pays heed to a lot more than America does. But Donald Trump will need partners and he will need friends, and Britain is the obvious and really the only obvious partner for him right now in the context of Europe and his broader strategy.
What does Theresa May give the billionaire who has everything? A traditional two-handed Scottish drinking cup known as a quaich, just like this one. But the special gift of the special relationship may not quite compare with the experience of a first presidential trip today on Air Force One. Julian Drucker, 5 News.
Well, as we came on air, the president has been speaking in Philadelphia, and he joked about having to take the lead in negotiations with Theresa May.
I mean, I'm meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow, as you know, Great Britain. So I'm meeting with her tomorrow. I don't have my Commerce Secretary. They want to talk trade. So I'll have to handle it myself. Which is okay.
Donald Trump speaking a few moments ago. 5's political editor is travelling with the Prime Minister. He's just landed in Philadelphia. Let's talk to him now. Andy, warm words from the Prime Minister about Donald Trump on the plane, but she's maybe got some tough words for him in that meeting.
Well, coming over on the plane, she was asked by journalists who were travelling with her, people saying, "You're very different characters. How are you going to get on with each other in this situation?" And she said, "Don't you know, sometimes opposites attract." Now, she was also asked specifically about those comments from President Trump about torture, when he said torture works. She said, "The British government's policy on torture has not changed. We condemn it." So clearly there are going to be some differences where she's going to try and, if you like, emphasise the difference on some particular issues, but there's no doubt about it. She is very keen to strike up a very strong relationship with this president, because more than anything, she thinks beyond the personalities at any particular moment, it is that special relationship which is very important between the US and the UK, and she's going to try and make that stronger in the 2 days that she's here.
And as we can see behind you, still a lot of people very anti the president. He does have a small staffing problem as well at the moment.
I didn't hear that last, but yes, you're right. There's a lot of demonstrators here because Theresa May has come here to Philadelphia because it's a meeting of the Republican Party leadership, and a lot of people are very unhappy with that, and unhappy with the fact that Donald Trump is here, obviously, and making a speech as well. But the main meeting between Theresa May and Donald Trump will take place tomorrow in the White House. We're expecting more words there. She says that she will make it clear where their differences lie. Particularly, she wants to say things like she believes in the future of the European Union, that the European Union should remain strong, whereas Donald Trump in the past has suggested that maybe the European Union has had its day. But that's going to be the main gist of the meeting. The big problem for Theresa May, or the big trick she has to pull off on this visit, is really to get close to Donald Trump, but probably not too close.
Andy, thanks very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Across the UK, today and every day, hundreds of thousands of children or young people perform a vital role. Looking after a sick or disabled relative can be almost like a full-time job, and yet most, of course, are trying to balance it with their education, and it's not easy. Official figures suggest that nearly 250,000 people under the age of 19 provide regular care for someone. But some think that's just the tip of the iceberg. One charity, the Carers Trust, estimates that 1 in every 12 secondary school pupils are carers. Not surprisingly, it affects their education. At least 13,000 of them are thought to be providing care for more than 50 hours a week. That's on top of their studies, while young carers miss, on average, 10 weeks of school a year. Well, Ruth Liptrot has been to meet a teenage girl who spent most of her life looking after her mum while striving to achieve her own ambitions.
It's a challenge for most 14-year-olds to get out of the door in the morning for school, but for Shamoy it's even trickier. That's because her mum, Aretha, has chronic pain syndrome, and Shamoy is her main carer.
Do laundry, wash up, clean the house, help mum around the house, get mum her medication, cook, help with shopping. And especially since I've got school in the morning, sometimes I have to wake up early just to make sure she's okay and stuff like that.
It's a lot for anyone to manage, let alone a teenager, but somehow she is managing to keep up with her schoolwork and is doing well academically. But even someone as hard-working as Shamoy gets overwhelmed at times.
It's hard because I'm constantly always tired and I'm always feeling weak, but I just have to push through because, you know, life's not easy, really, is it? If you're like in my year or like in year 11 or something like that, it's going to be especially hard because you've got GCSEs coming up and you're expected to do well. And it's just like, oh yeah, no pressure. Like, you want to do well, but then you've got so much on your hands, like you don't know what to do.
So how does her mum feel about their situation?
Sometimes that responsibility can take her away from being herself being like a teenager, you know. And that's the fear. I don't want her to stop being a teenager just because she has to, you know, tend to me at times, you know, because that makes you feel guilty. And when I feel guilty, it just put me in that stress mode. And when the stress come on, then the pain come on. So it's a cycle.
But who is Shamoy when she's not looking after her mum? Well, she loves music and would love to follow a career in that, or, unsurprisingly, in one of the caring professions. But there's no question that her situation has made her older than her years.
I think that because of my mum's illness and stuff, I've become more understanding about people, not just my mum, but people in general. Like, I'm not going to ever judge someone by how they look, because you don't know what's going on in their life. Like, you don't know what they're going through.
Shimoy is clearly someone with the potential to do really, really well at whatever she sets her mind to. Right now, though, her priority is taking care of her mum.
Let's speak now to Gail Scott Spicer, who's Chief Executive of the Carers Trust. Hello, welcome to the programme, Gail.
Hi.
You look at these figures and they're just astonishing. I mean, 1 in 12 secondary school children could be carers. Where do you get the figures from?
Yeah, we've got some new research that we're actually talking about today, which we've done at the Carers Trust, which shows that young people who are carers are in real danger of missing out on their education and not fulfilling their life ambitions. So it's great to talk to them and understand what's going on for them. We know that about half of them are really struggling and not coping with their schoolwork. About 60% are not meeting deadlines with their school and really worrying about that. And we also know that about a third of them are regularly skipping school because they need to be at home caring for their family member.
If they don't do it, sadly, there might not be anyone else to care for a family member. So how can they be helped?
Well, actually, there's a lot of support out there for carers. There's always more to do, but it's really important that young carers reach out, speak to somebody who might be in their confidence, perhaps at school, or another professional, perhaps in the health service, etc. So they're able to reach out and try to get help, because actually at Carers Trust there are 90 services all around the country who are supporting young carers, but giving them lots of advice and information. We've also got some online forums, so if people go to our website, carers.org, they can go to Matter and Babble, which are 2 online forums, and they can share, chat, talk, and sometimes talk anonymously, which is really important. Sometimes it's the first step for them to reach out, because sometimes they're quite worried about talking to people.
It's that thwarted ambition as well, which is so sad, isn't it? Not being able to fulfil their dreams. I mean, can anything be done to help them with that?
I think the main thing is about early identification. So we're running Young Carers Awareness Day today, and our theme is about what I want to do when I grow up. When I grow up, I will. And so it's about their ambition. It's about early identification. Schools are really important in that, and teachers, and we work a lot with schools and teachers to help them.
But they've got to know
carers
as well, haven't they, who in their class is caring and needing a bit more support.
Yeah, that's
What should they look out for?
Well, that's right, and there's signs. So they can look out for children perhaps being absent, not coming to classes very often. I said that some of them are skipping school. Also behavioural issues and anxiety and depression, and just trying to have a safe place where children can kind of talk in confidence is really important.
Gail Scott Spicer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'll get plenty more information about young carers on our Facebook page. You just search for C5 News. A violent paedophile who hid one of his victims in a hole in the wall while police were visiting has been convicted of a string of sex offences. Michael Dunn was found guilty of charges including 10 rapes involving 4 women and girls. He made a cavity behind his fridge and hid one young girl from officers at least 8 times. The comedian Rory McGrath has admitted to stalking a married woman for more than a year. The 60-year-old changed his plea on the first day of his trial. The court heard after they'd broken off an affair, he sent her texts and followed her in the street and wrote letters to her husband. And Labour Shadow Minister Tulip Siddiq has resigned after being told by Jeremy Corbyn she had to back Brexit. She says leaving the European Union would create huge uncertainty and that the disadvantages would outweigh any benefits. Well, the government has moved Britain one step closer to Brexit today. It's published draft legislation that will give ministers permission to trigger Article 50. And MPs will have 3 days to debate that bill next week. So what would you want your MP to raise? Well, the Hampshire town of Basingstoke mirrored the national vote, falling 52% in favour of leaving to 48% in favour of remaining. Dominic Reynolds went there to ask people.
It may be about to begin, so what should Brexit mean? The people in this town had their finger right on the national pulse back in June, so let's take a seat on the Basingstoke Brexit sofa. Janet's already told her MP she wants her to vote Brexit through. She and her friend Brenda have 10 grandchildren between them. They want Britain's future to feel more like its past.
How it used to be, I don't know how many years ago. But like you didn't have to wait 4 weeks for a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
You didn't have to wait.
And you wasn't controlled by Brussels. Being told you can't have mushy peas and you can't have all sorts of things.
Do you think Brexit will make it how it used to be?
No, probably not.
Step forward Dennis and Fabiola. Born in different parts of the Commonwealth, Cameroon and Mauritius, they voted different ways in June. Now Dennis is worried that without very good trade deals, Britain will struggle to compete with global giants like China.
China producing more than even Britain, you know. When Britain have to go out of the EU and have to face these people, these countries.
You sound like you're nodding like you've heard these arguments before.
Yeah,
you guys argue about this a lot.
Yes, EU, it's like a label. It's like, yes, we are EU, we are going to do things amongst themselves. It's not opening the doors to other people.
Well,
global market is definitely,
Maybe I should leave you guys on the sofa to fight this one out.
Chris and Rachel were disappointed Britain's Leave vote didn't lower house prices. 6 months later, they're concerned it'll narrow little Phoebe's horizons. She's 5 months old.
After these negotiations are all done, 2 years, what kind of Britain do you hope that Phoebe's going to inherit?
I just want to make sure that everybody's working together and that all her options are open. I don't want her to be restricted and to become very closed in her views. I want it to remain open.
That's the view from our sofa in Basingstoke, but it's over to Westminster now to see how many opinions from this little version of Britain end up part of our Brexit future. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News in Basingstoke.
Coming up on 5 News Tonight. More than 70 years on, the campaign for the last surviving British dam buster to be knighted. And fancy wakeboarding into your 90s. We meet the man who's rewritten the rule book on getting old. We'll see you after the break. Hello and welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. A petition for the last surviving British dam buster to be knighted has been delivered to Downing Street. George Johnson, known as Johnny, was in charge of aiming the bouncing bombs at their targets during those daring raids on Hitler's Germany in 1943. Well, the petition gained well over 200,000 signatures and was handed to Number 10 by supporter Carol Vorderman and former RAF pilot John Nichol today. But Squadron Leader Johnson insists if he did get the honour, it wouldn't be just for him.
The hope to be able to ask, if this comes to anything, to ask, if necessary, Her Majesty, if I may be permitted to dedicate that to the memory of the 55,573 Bomber Command people that gave their lives in the first service of their countries. There is so little recognition of that loss of lost life from Bomber Command during the war. I don't know of any other military unit, single unit, that had as many losses.
Johnny Johnson. Well, earlier I spoke to Carol Vorderman, who's also an honorary ambassador for the Air Cadets, and asked her why she got involved.
Because Johnny Johnson is a fantastic man. He's a gentleman, he's a hero, he's brave, he's inspirational. I got to know him last year in my capacity as ambassador for the Royal Air Force Air Cadets. And I met him along with a lot of air cadets, and he adores young people and they equally adore him. And so I've got to know Johnny. We both live in Bristol, and I've got to know him reasonably well over that time. And then in the new year, I didn't know that he'd been nominated by somebody else at all. And then the story came out that he'd been snubbed and not given an honour in this year's list. So I spoke to the Sun newspaper and set up a campaign and a petition, and that was only 3 weeks ago. And here we are now with 240,000 people have signed, and it's going up by the hour quite dramatically. And so I handed in the petition, which was then at 230,000, I think, earlier today, and also the official nomination. So we've put together a brand new official nomination for an honour.
And can you influence what they do? Can you influence whether they give him a knighthood or not?
The thing is, nobody knows because it's conducted in such secrecy. However, you can kind of get clues from who receives awards. So I think, I mean, there have been some, many fine people, obviously, who've received awards, and obviously and rightly, Olympians and Paralympians got many this time. And I think, you know, their influence has been tremendously positive in that, you know, they've made us all feel better. And I think if we can demonstrate that the likes of a hero, our last surviving dam buster, also makes us feel that way, feel proud to be British, then surely to goodness they're following the same rules. He should be honoured.
When you look down the list of those who were knighted,
yes,
what did you think?
Well, you know, I mean, there are some people who you and I wouldn't necessarily know about, but in their field have done great work, and that's absolutely fair enough. Where I have a problem is where, for instance, you know, the communications director at Number 10...
Craig Oliver.
Yes.
Sir Craig Oliver.
Sir Craig Oliver was knighted and Johnny Johnson wasn't. So if this is about what you have done for your country and what you have done to make Britain great, which is kind of what I imagine an honour to be, then surely, if Craig Oliver is deserving, then Johnny Johnson is 100 times more deserving. So that's kind of the logic that I would apply to it. And I think the demonstration that, you know, nearly 250,000 people have signed this petition in 3 weeks, many of whom who didn't know the story of the dam busters before, I think that shows the resonance that it has with the public today.
Carol Vorderman speaking to me earlier about Johnny Johnson. Well, from one extraordinary man in his 90s to another, former dentist Charles Eugster started rowing competitively at 63, and 2 years ago, at 95, he took up running for the first time in his life.
Set.
At the ripe old age of 97, Charles is now Britain's fastest nonagenarian and holds numerous world records in sprinting. Not only that, he's also a bodybuilder and enjoys more extreme sports like wakeboarding. And I'm thrilled to say he joins me now. And you had a little giggle at that. Why was that, Charles?
Well, I am no longer wakeboarding.
Are you not?
No.
It's too much for you, is it now?
Yes. I would say at the moment I concentrate on sprinting, and the other thing is that my coach has persuaded me to start a long jump. So I am now registered for the long jump for the World Masters in South Korea, and I can tell you that I hold the British record for the long jump, and when I did it, I had a strained muscle. I was just sort of hobbling, and just by more luck than anything else, I managed to land into the sand pit. And because nobody else in my age group had ever even attempted, I have the British record with a distance that I am sure any 7-year-old could beat.
You describe, talking to 7-year-olds, you describe yourself in your book as a weedy boy prone to headaches.
Yes.
So how did that weedy boy turn into somebody who wanted to do bodybuilding at the age of 80?
Well, vanity was probably the main source.
Vanity?
Absolutely. Vanity, I consider vanity to be one of the biggest assets that you can have in old age. And it was vanity that made me want to change my body that was deteriorating in spite of the fact that I was rowing 6 days a week. In spite of that, my body deteriorated and I didn't like the way I looked. And so I joined a bodybuilding club at the age of, 87? And joined a bodybuilding club and employed a previous Mr. Universe to rebuild my body. And finally, after 3 years, my body was rebuilt. And now I am convinced, and this is my message, you can rebuild your body at any age, you can learn something new at any age, and you can start a new life at any age. And old age can be one of the most stupendous, amazing, surprising, glorious, superb part of your life. You have nothing to lose except the chains of convention.
Go out there and enjoy your old age, Charles, is what you're telling people tonight.
Absolutely, and read my book.
Of course, age is just a number.
That is
Charles,
right.
it is a joy to talk to you. Keep doing what you're doing, and thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now, Francesca Bradley Curran is a living miracle. She was born 4 months premature, and if she had arrived 2 days earlier, it would have been before the 24-week abortion limit, doctors said, would have been treated as a miscarriage. Through her first agonising week, she suffered meningitis, sepsis, 2 collapsed lungs, kidney problems, and had 15 blood transfusions. But as Peter Lane found out, she's battled through to reach 9 months old, happy and healthy.
This picture says it all. Francesca was tiny. The hands you can see are her dad's, reaching into the hospital incubator. A baby born 4 months early. Her family told she probably wouldn't make it. Well, look at Francesca today as those same hands tickle the happy baby now safely at home, a world away from those first weeks.
I was actually scared to touch her.
Yeah.
We was warned that because her skin was so premature, if you stroked her or you tried to tickle her or anything like that, it would hurt her. We got told to take it hour by hour, day by day, week by week.
Timing did matter. If Francesca had arrived just 2 days earlier, the abortion cut-off point means doctors wouldn't have been obliged to intervene. But medical staff and Francesca herself worked wonders. She's come through meningitis, blood poisoning, collapsed lungs, kidney problems, blood transfusions and laser eye surgery, and is now perfectly fit and healthy.
She's just fantastic. She is just an absolute miracle to us. She makes me so proud every single day when I look at her. And I forget how little she was until I look back at pictures. And I didn't think I'd be sat here now with her the way she is. It is just an absolute miracle.
The family have made a memory board of some of the life-saving equipment from hospital and Francesca's first clothes. And for Mum, tattoos of her daughter's tiny hand and footprints, a lasting reminder of what they've all been through.
She's just amazing. I get up every morning and look at her in the cot and the big gummy smile at me, and I just think, wow.
Before the whole experience, I don't think I was a crier. I think I've cried more since she's been born than I have done the rest of my life.
She may have raced into the world weighing just 1 pound 6 ounces, but Francesca has put all that drama well and truly behind her. Peter Lane, 5 News.
That's it from us. Claire Nazir has the weather next. Danny has updates throughout the evening. Thanks for watching tonight. Bye for now.